Hi everyone, it is your friendly player Alex,
And your not so friendly DM, Ben.
and we are Married with Dragons.
To be back, episode 3.
Yeah, episode 3. So, just a little rundown of what we're going to talk about this evening is pretty much just a little bit of a funny D&D story about one of our campaigns. Some metagaming.
Yeah, what is metagaming?
What is metagaming?
Metagaming can be good in certain things, but not quite as good in D&D. How to combat that.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of metagaming. But...
No, it's quite a big topic, so we'll touch on it.
And, of course, some, tickle our funny bones a little bit at the end with some D&D jokes.
Tickle our funny bones a little bit. I think the jokes are the highlight of the stream, let's be honest
I
reckon. Alright, so you want to start with the story?
Yeah, do you want to...
I've got one in mind for tonight. This was this is a story for a game I was DMing, and it was when I was still relatively new as a DM. You were a player in this game.
Yeah, this was my. I think this was.
It was your first campaign. I believe.
First campaign, so the first few sessions in.
I think we were maybe 5, 6-ish, maybe roundabout sessions in, and yeah, like I said, I was still pretty new. This is the first time I'd ever tried dungeon mastering, and so. Improv is something that you always build on as you go, but it was something that I still had to really develop, something that I hadn't really had much experience with before. And I can remember this one session, the players, you managed to get to the top of Firefinger.
Yes.
Which is basically this tall tower construct in the middle of the jungle. And you were essentially trying to help an NPC finish their quest. Can you remember what you were trying to find? Get back?
I think it was an item, like an artifact.
It was the it was an artifact, a mask that this NPC had lost. It was a family heirloom. Anyway, party got to the top of this tower, which was about 200 feet high from memory. It might have been exactly 200 feet high, and they climbed up. It was a dangerous climb up, few traps and whatnot to get to the very top, but they still managed to get up. There are ladders and stuff. They cleared a lot of the enemies, made it up, and I thought I didn't even think planning that the getting down would be an issue, and really it shouldn't have been. However, one of my players decided that they wanted to invent the parachute and then jump off the building.
And I'm pretty sure this was after we cleared a few enemies as well, so they were flying enemies. So I'm pretty sure from memory he created the parachute from a corpse.
Yes, he did. It was a bit of a gory parachute, but I had him make the rolls, make the checks. He sort of skinned the wing of these terrafolk, which are basically like D&D's version of humanoid pterodactyls. They're quite terrifying, but very fun to throw at your players. But he basically took the wings of this dead terrafolk and used some rope and whatnot, and eventually managed to invent the first parachute, because parachutes didn't really exist in the world I was running. And he decided that he wanted to jump off instead of, I don't know why, apparently just going down normally would have been too dull, I guess.
I think it's just a casual idea that someone brought up, and it just turned into...
He just ran with it.
It was like, hey, let's do that. And I think also rolling extremely well was in his favourite.
Yeah, and I was like, sure, do whatever you like. So everyone else in the party decided to just go down the tower normally. But this one player decided to invent this parachute, jump off, and try to glide down, basically saving time, quote unquote. I don't know, if it actually did save time. But he jumped off, and I did some rolls to see if there was wind or whatnot. And basically, he rolled really well. He was gliding through the air majestically. However, there did happen to be quite a strong gust of wind, which ended up actually taking him. And I sort of described it in the sense of, like, anyone who's watched Pokemon knows when Jesse and James get blown into the distance, there's, the little ding, like little light in the distance. I basically described it as that. I can't remember his character's name. It was so long ago. But basically described this character just flying off into the distance on this parachute made of terrafolk skin. And
we end up losing him.
You did end up... Siri, shush. You did end up losing him. I did actually do some planning with the player and said, look, you lost by yourself in the jungle. I didn't tell the other players whether or not he was dead or alive. But the player
don't know either.
Still don't know. I was planning on doing something with him later on in the campaign, but the campaign didn't actually end up finishing. But I can just remember that was such a weird a weird session because it was one of the first sort of improv bits I had to do, and like I was like, okay, you can do that, and then I rolled really bad for the win. I was like, oh well, you did it, but see you later. You're now by yourself in the middle of the jungle, very very deadly jungle, all on your own. Everyone just basically assumed he probably died without even landing safely. But...
I think we soon gave up.
Yeah, he didn't look for him for very long. He got over it pretty quick. Wasn't a very dear friend of the party.
We had no clues, so it was hard to keep going with that.
yeah. But I mean, it made for a great story. In the end, it didn't work out fantastically for the player. But I suppose it's a little bit of, I don't know, advice to take away for anyone who wants to DM is if something really left field or out of the blue happens, just roll with it. I mean, as long as it's not ridiculous or game breaking or goes against the laws of your physics or whatnot, go with it. See what happens. Even if it doesn't work out very well for the players involved, it might still end up in a great story. The players, everyone that was playing had a great laugh, and that player ended up playing a different character, which I think he was pretty keen to do anyway. Which I think is why maybe he jumped off.
Yeah,
because he thought if I die, maybe I can play a different character.
Sometimes it's like that though. Sometimes you low key want your character to die so you can start another one that you're really keen to play.
Maybe. Hopefully it doesn't get to that point too often. I get quite attached to my characters. I don't like it when they die at all.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was my bit of a funny tidbit for tonight.
Yeah.
I'll never forget that one. It certainly was a strange instance.
I think that was probably your first strange occurrence whilst DMing.
Yeah, well, I think in that campaign, up until that point, everything had gone by, not as I had planned per se, but everything had gone by quite smoothly. There weren't really any huge curveballs. There weren't really any what are you trying to do? It was pretty smooth sailing, and then that happened, and it wasn't quite as smooth sailing. But made for a good story.
Oh my gosh. But I can't remember. He didn't even come back. So
no, he didn't. I did have plans for later on, regardless of whether or not that player was going to keep playing the character. I did have plans for the character, but unfortunately, it didn't come to fruition. As often happens in D&D, life got in the way for that campaign a little bit. It was a while ago now, and the group unfortunately just fell apart a little bit just due to other commitments.
Yeah. So we have a little question here before we get onto metagaming.
Okay.
So how do you stop your players bullying you into a bad or boring story move? Every game I've been in, someone has really wanted to do something, and DMs struggle to fight against that.
I think that really comes down. I'm speaking from a DM's perspective.
Yeah. That
really comes down to the DM. If that is something that kept happening, I would suggest that the players, if I was doing something as a dungeon master that my players didn't enjoy, that was just, I don't know, making the game less fun for them, or having that bad or boring sort of feel, I would want my players to say, hey, this particular style, this particular rule that you're adapting, we're not really enjoying it. Can we alter it in some way? So as a DM, I feel like it's really important to take on information like that, and it's that old actors and improv analogy. You don't say no, you say yes and. So if your players want to do something crazy, don't just immediately say no, unless it's just physically not possible. Don't just instantly say no. Say, yeah, sure, you can attempt this, and it might not work out exactly the way I want it, or it might lead to something else happening, but sort of try to say yes a bit more, as far as from a DM perspective. From a player's perspective, how do you think you'd handle that situation?
Well, as a player, I don't know if I'm in the position to stop a player bullying you into a bad story move. I guess, I don't know. I feel as though that's a tough one. I feel like with my experience with having certain parts of my story to be played, I kind of put myself in the mindset that, no, this is my character, this is my story. If it's obviously a move that's going to really affect every party member, then I guess it'd be something I'd have to reconsider. But I think you just have, at the end of the day, you're playing the game as your character. You can basically do what you want to do within reason. But if a other player is bullying you into doing something that you don't want to do, simply just don't do it.
I might have. Yeah. So this was more so the player pushing not to the DM as much this
to the
scenario.
DM.
Is it? Is that what we're...
How was that? Well, it's how do you stop your players bullying you?
Players, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
I'm just thinking if it was another player bullying me into doing a bad move.
At the end of the day, everyone should have their own player. We refer to it as player agency, which basically means everyone has control over their own character. And really, that, again, communication is such a big thing, because if you're not having fun or you're not enjoying a particular part, you need to make it vocal, because if people aren't aware, they might not even be aware that they're doing it. If people aren't aware, they can't solve the issue. The Dungeon Master has a really important role in that. If one particular player is doing something, or one or two particular players is doing something that is taking the fun away from the rest of the group, or from some players in the group, really, it's not a fun job, but it's up to the DM to mediate that, to resolve that issue. So if it's a player that's really, forcing you to do things, or taking away your player agency, or making you do things that you don't want to do, mention it to your DM and give them the opportunity to rectify it out of game, to rectify it with the player, to sort of make sure it doesn't happen again. Because that's the DM's job, is to facilitate the game.
You can also, depends on what part of the game you're doing. If you're... Say the party is split, or one of the characters is not near your character, and another player is like, oh, you should do this, or you need to do that, and they start pushing it. You can basically say, if that character's not even near you, be like, well, your character's not even near me, you have really no say. So...
Yeah, I mean, as a player, sometimes that is taken a little bit out of your hands, because you can sort of describe what your character's doing, but you can certainly do stuff like that. Like I said, I think... if players are butting heads a little bit, I certainly think it still comes down to everyone as a group, but I think it's up to the DM to at least sort of facilitate some discussions. Hey, Jimmy Bob, you sort of, what you're doing is making Billy Bob, Jimmy Bob and Billy Bob, not have as much fun. He's feeling like you're pressuring him to doing things, and sort of trying to stamp out that behaviour. A lot of that stuff can really be stamped out as well, and I feel like this is the number one bit of advice I give. But a lot of this sort of stuff can be really stamped out with a good session 0. What I mean by that is, like, session 0 is the session you have before you actually start the campaign. And that's when you can sort of put to everyone, what sort of game do we want to play? Do we want it to be really role-play focused? Do we want it to be really combat focused? The DM can say during session 0, right, make sure that if someone decides they want to do something, that's up to them. That if they want to do something, that's fine. You can't control someone else's player. Making that sort of stuff really clear in a session 0 can actually stop a lot of these issues popping up down the track.
Yeah, definitely. And a good point's made is that separating yourself from the character as well. So, yeah, with session 0, you can help flesh that out. You can flesh out how your character's going to act, and yeah, just have to remember you can't really act like your character out of game. And
I feel like that can be a really dangerous, like, it's an important thing, but it's also a really dangerous thing to sort of get to in the mindset of, oh, that's what my character would do. Because it's great, provided that you don't make a character, and I cannot say this enough, you should not make a character in D&D that won't work with other people. That simply won't work in a party, or won't work. You shouldn't. You can make a character that might not get along with everyone, or might be, have a bit of an edge, or
it's like, for example, you wouldn't have, say, a party that is out on a quest to do a really good thing, save the world kind of style playthrough, and then you have that one chaotic evil that wants to ruin everything for you. You don't put a chaotic evil with pretty much...
No. And then that comes down to, again, D&D is a team sport. You're playing with other people. Yeah. You're not trying to shine you as the only player in the game. No, you're playing with other people. And if you're making if you're making a character that's constantly, stabbing other players in the back, or stealing from them, or just going against the party, well, then don't play that character. Because... if you're saying, oh, that's what my character would do, why did you create that character in the first place?
Exactly.
You're the one that gave it those ideals and those motives. Don't make a character that's going to do something that's going to ruin the fun for anyone else in the party.
And having another player try and tell you what to do can also fall into the topic that we're going to talk about tonight, which is metagaming. Where
such a big topic.
Where... if there's a player bullying you into doing certain story moves, that can be meta, especially if there's a motive behind it. Whenever there is any type of metagaming going on, then, which we'll describe a bit further in a second, it's probably best to talk to the DM about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like I said, really, with most issues that pop up in game, generally 99% of the time, it's best to just approach the DM first.
Yeah.
And say, okay, this is happening in the game that I'm not super happy with. It's ruining the fun a little bit for me, or it gets on my nerves. Can we do something about it? Because as I said, the GM, the DM or the GM, Dungeon Master, Games Master, they're the ones that facilitate the game. They're the ones that keep it running smoothly. They're still there to have fun. They're not like the rules police. But it's part of their role to make sure that everyone's having a good time. Everyone's playing a game and enjoying it together.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
I suppose before we get stuck into metagaming, it's important to actually explain what metagaming is.
So metagaming, well, you probably explain it a lot better than I do, since you deal with, well, actually, players and DMs deal with metagaming quite a lot, but I think DMs have probably more hands-on.
I mean, I think we deal with it in different ways, and I think it's going to be good to sort of get like the player perspective as well as the DM perspective as well. So metagaming stands for most effective tactic available. So in some games, like metagaming is like something that you desire to do. Like you want to try and get the most effective way to beat a boss, or to like generally video games. That might be something that you're aspiring to. However, in D&D, metagaming is like a taboo word. It's not good. Basically, what it's referring to is using, because obviously in Dungeons and Dragons, you're role playing. You're putting yourself into the mind of the character, and you have the knowledge that the character knows, the experiences the character has, and you're role playing that character. Metagaming is when you're using knowledge outside of game. That, for example, especially if you've DM'd before, you might know a lot about monster statistics, monster like weaknesses or strengths, stuff like that. So if I went into a game and I was playing a character, and we came across a creature that my character has never encountered before, but me as the player knows what those monsters' strengths and weaknesses and stuff are, metagaming would be if I used that knowledge to, have my character go and exploit those strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah.
And it's really kind of difficult sometimes to make sure when you're a player to remind yourself, hey, actually, I probably wouldn't know that knowledge. I'm going to try and role play this as best I can.
Yeah. See, from a player perspective, especially if you're a new player and you're going up against, not going up against, but you're playing with experienced players, it does suck when you come across a monster or a character or a type of race that you personally, even your outside knowledge, you know nothing about. This is your first time experiencing it, and then you have another player, spitting out every single fact about that monster, race, NPC, and it kind of ruins it, because now you have the knowledge, and then you kind of just end up.
There's absolutely excitement.
Yeah, it does. There's absolutely excitement out of it. Plus, it also sways the moves that you end up making as well. Because, for me, especially as a new player, and I still find myself as a new player, because I'm finding like every game that we play, every session we play, I find out something new, and it's really exciting to learn about something. And then you have that one player that we're like, oh, yep, I dealt with this boss 10 years ago, and I know all of this.
Half the time they won't even get the information right. Yeah. They'll be like giving wrong information.
It just zaps out the excitement, especially if they know if it's I like the mystery of finding out if a boss is a bad boss, a really bad boss, or like something that's really dangerous or cool, and someone kind of spoils it for you. And
I think the other side of metagaming, which is probably even more frustrating, so like I said, there's multiple levels of metagaming. We talk about it for hours. One of the other levels of metagaming, which I find really frustrating, so as you said, people can ruin, use outside knowledge about monsters and stuff like that as well.
Yeah.
But one facet of metagaming is when, especially if you've got like an experienced player in a group with a newer player, is when another player tries to tell someone how to play their character.
Yes.
When they say in combat, no, don't do that, do this, you'll get more damage, or why are you doing that one-handed, you should do it two-handed, or trying to tell the player how to play that character. That's one form of metagaming that I absolutely can't stand.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, everyone is, all the players are playing their individual characters, and they can play them however they like. If they want to use it one-handed instead of two-handed, that's fine. All right, I don't think it's appropriate at all for a player to tell someone else how they should be playing the game.
Exactly.
There's no, within reason, there's no right or wrong way of playing D&D.
No.
Provided everyone's having fun in the group, there's no wrong way of playing D&D.
Yeah. It's kind of like, for example, I'm just going to use a little personal story here. I built a tank, a barbarian tank, and I mainly built her to be defense instead of offense. And then I had another player pretty much questioning, why am I not putting all my points in strength? Why am I not putting all my points into an offense kind of stats? Because I could deal a lot more damage. I mean, I could deal enough damage, really, but I wanted to be the one that was in the fight, taking all the hits while the party members could get all their damage in. And that's how I wanted to play. I wanted to be a defensive tank. And it really, it makes you question, especially as a new player, it really questions if you're doing something right when you have another person questioning why you're not playing to their standard or to their opinion. And that is what falls into metagaming as well. It's
basically breaking down the game and using your understanding of the game's mechanics to try and, deal as much damage as possible or be as strong as possible by, using outside knowledge that your player, like your character, wouldn't know, is basically what metagaming is.
Yeah.
And you deal with it a little bit differently as a DM and a player. So I'll talk a little bit about how I deal with it as a DM. So it's important to know, if you're a dungeon master, it's important to understand and realise the players in your group, majority of the time, are likely going to have outside knowledge of the game, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with someone knowing that, you have to kill a troll by using fire or something. There's nothing wrong with having that knowledge because they can't help it, provided that they don't exploit it all the time. So I suppose it's really important for a DM to understand that, your players probably do have a little bit of outside knowledge, and that's okay. If a player is metagaming, that's when, if they're metagaming sort of, in the sense that we were mentioning where it's telling another player how to play their character, as a DM, I'd let the person know, look, that's not on, we can't do that. Everyone plays their characters how they want to play it. They don't have to play it in a particular way. If they want to, be more defensive or offensive, whatever, that's fine. As in a combat sense, and there's a few different ways you can tackle this, and I've done a couple of these. In a combat sense, if a player or a couple of players are metagaming, provided that you're comfortable enough with improvisation, just change the stat blocks of the monster. I've done it before. If a player has, their character comes across a strange exotic creature that there's no way that their character would know what it is, and they're metagaming for it, just change. All right, instead of immunity to cold, it's now got immunity to fire. Just change your stat, mix it up. Maybe it's a more exotic version of that monster, and immediately you can't metagame anymore because they don't know the information.
Yeah.
So that's one way you can go about it. Another way you can go about it is sort of even mid combat, sort of question it. Say for example, there's a split party and one of the parties gets into combat, and the other party has a player that immediately goes, right, I'm going to run back to the other party. Question be like, okay, why is your character doing that? And if I'm never going to stop them doing that action because I'm not going to take away a player's agency. But if they go, I'm going to run back to the group, well, why? And generally it sort of stops them in the tracks because they can't say, because a fight's broken out. Yeah, but your character wouldn't know that. Is there another reason why you're running back to the group? And if they can't think of a reason, generally they're like, actually, no, I'll stay there. And it sort of helps stamp out the metagaming a little bit as well. Again, I feel like I'm going to harp on this a lot, but a lot of it can be solved with a strong session 0. If you mention this stuff at a strong session 0, mention, look, you know what, guys, this is a role-playing game, let's immerse ourselves and not use our outside knowledge. A lot of the time it can sort of stamp out the issue, but as a DM, those are probably the main ways to deal with metagaming from that point of view.
Yeah, and if it can't get stamped out in a session 0, then obviously that is a player that you'll probably need to monitor throughout the campaign. But we'll touch base probably on another episode regarding problem players.
Yeah, it's a whole other topic.
That one probably be a little bit of a long one. But metagaming from a player point of view.
I mean, how do you stop yourself from doing it as a player?
Well, I don't actually know because I've never metagamed. Because I don't have much outside knowledge.
Yeah, so I suppose it's if you don't have the outside knowledge.
But well, actually, I don't know if this actually counts as metagaming, but we did. So my first campaign was Tomb of Annihilation, and we did an in-person session, and then obviously with our
a few sessions,
yeah. Obviously, a few players, liked it on the way, and we never continued with it until a few months later we picked it up again from the start. Now, so these were with some new players, and the start of the Tomb of Annihilation again was stuff I already knew.
Some of it. I still edited it a little bit, but
Yeah.
you still did have a bit of outside information.
And I knew that if we went with this NPC, we were going to probably go down the same path that we did in the very first campaign. So what I pretty much did was basically I didn't mention anything. I didn't mention anything like say no. I pretty much as a point of view, I knew if I went to that NPC, I'd want to try something new. So I'd sway towards another NPC. But if other players really wanted to go with the same NPC that I have already dealt with, I just would be like, yeah, sure, that's fine. I think it's just kind of, you've got to be in the realization that not everyone has played the same amount of D&D that you have played. So that's probably the only time I could have met it and said, oh no, if we did this, it'll lead us to this, this, and this.
I suppose the other thing with metagaming as well is, I mean, it sort of just ruins the fun
It
a
does.
bit for you, because you're taking away a lot of the mystery or the challenge, and you're going to be the one suffering because you're editing the game that way, and it's important to remember that not only are you ruining the game for other people, you're also ruining it for yourself as well.
Yeah.
Like,
And I think to stop metagaming, being a player and seeing another player metagame is, if you're comfortable with it, is just speak out.
Yeah.
I think that's how I do it.
Communication is so important in all facets of D&D.
We've had a player that tries to meta quite a lot, and when they do, it's simply saying like, no, that's meta. Pretty much saying, yeah, that's meta. They usually pipe down. If they want to argue on it, that's probably when you can bring it to the DM, be like, is this discussion allowed? But I think
and one tip I have for players as well, if they do have that outside knowledge and they really want to try and be conscious of not metagaming, is you can even say to the like I've actually previously done it in the Curse of Strahd campaign. I've asked my DM, hey, how much information would I know about this creature or this monster? So I know myself, I know a lot of information, but I say, look, would my character have much information? And if they say yes, then be like, okay, sweet, I'll use that information.
Yeah.
If he says no, all right, I'll just play out the situation as if I'm encountering it for the first time. So don't be afraid to ask your dungeon master, hey, am I able to use this information that I have? Because, I mean, that's showing a lot of respect for the game as well, because you're trying to be conscious of other people, trying to be conscious of playing the game fairly.
Yeah, exactly.
I think there's nothing wrong with doing that.
Yeah, so I think to avoid yourself metagaming is just, I think it's self-awareness is probably the main thing. Like, you need to remember you're not the only person there that, not everyone knows what you know. So that's probably, and I think if you have another player that's metagaming towards you or telling you you should do this or that, it just simply go, no, my character would not do that.
Yeah. And, it's confronting to do something like that, especially if you're new to the game, or if you're a bit more of an introverted personality. It can be very confronting to do something like that. And if you're not, if you don't feel comfortable doing that, that's when you can be like, you can do it after the game, go to the DM, hey, this has happened, it's not really sitting right with me, can we sort of try and remedy it in the future?
Yeah. So I think we'll probably run through some examples of what is metagaming, just so you know what to identify. So obviously someone having outside knowledge of monster statistics, if they've played the campaign before, or if they've run into the boss before, or NPCs, any of that outside knowledge they're bringing into the game that their character would not know.
It could be something as simple as well, which has popped up in the campaign I'm currently running, if they know what a magic item is. And sometimes it's some of the fun part about finding like a strange item is not knowing what it is and trying to have to figure out what it is or what it could do. And there was a time in the campaign where I showed the players an image of what the item they had found. And I know for a fact one of my players instantly knew what it was.
Yeah.
But he didn't say anything. He played dumb. He was like, he told me, like, I so know what that is. I'm like, I know, like, don't worry.
Yeah.
But like, he played dumb in the moment. He didn't say anything. He didn't ruin it for other players. Because it was, that was an exciting part. Ooh, what does this do? Like, let's uncover its magic.
Yeah. And I think, that's good. It's just, sometimes it's best to play dumb. I think when you're playing D&D, you've got to kind of channel your character.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As it says in the title, it is a role-playing game.
Yeah.
It's such an important part of it. And it's so much more fun if you try to forget about all of your outside knowledge and just get into your character and be like, right, this is what's happening in the moment. This is what my character's going to be doing. You know, don't worry about the stats and the, how much damage you're dealing. There's another really good topic that we'll touch on in another episode as well is power gaming. And I've watched a few fantastic videos and read up a few fantastic articles about power gaming. So very excited to talk about that. But don't think about that sort of stuff. Just have fun in the game. At the end of the day, it's a game.
Yeah.
Get into your character. Enjoy the story that you're telling with your friends, and that's the best part about it.
Yeah, exactly. What other examples of meta is there?
It can be as simple and straightforward as simply looking stuff up.
Oh, yes.
This is a lot less prevalent if you're playing like physically at a table, because obviously you can't just whip out your laptop or your phone at the table without it being a bit more obvious.
But if you're playing online on Roll20 or any other on Discord or any other app,
much harder to monitor that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But again, at the end of the day, I don't see it as a DM's responsibility to monitor players doing that. If they want to ruin stuff for themselves, that's on them. The DM can't possibly keep track of what everyone's looking at on the internet or whatever. Provided that as long as they don't, hopefully they don't do it at all. But if they do it, they don't put it on other people.
Yeah, exactly. Swaying you to build a certain character a certain way, where to put your points when you level up, and I guess and also telling you what items you should use, what weapons you should use, because how you build your character and how you play a character
personal preference.
Is entirely up to you.
You might do something just because you think it looks cool or because it sounds cool. Doesn't matter about the stats or the damage or just this would look badass. This is what I want my character to be like, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
So I think that it's important to be aware of it, and it's important. Another aspect as well that I think actually someone mentioned in the chat before is you've got to be careful as a DM that you don't metagame either.
Yes.
Because as a dungeon master, obviously you know a lot about the characters, the player characters. You know a lot about their strengths and weaknesses. And so if you're in a fight and if you've got a wizard, but you know that someone has counterspell or someone has resistance to fire, you can't use that information, or you shouldn't use that information to target other players or whatnot. You might, as a dungeon master, have a monster attack someone in a way that won't work, but the monster doesn't necessarily know that. The enemy doesn't necessarily know that. So you're still trying to role play in a meaningful way. And the other really good thing about doing that is, which I think gets sort of pushed aside a lot, is say if a person does have a resistance or immunity to some sort of damage. If you have a monster or an enemy attack them and they don't take any damage because they're immune, it really showcases that immunity or that resistance. It makes the player feel badass. It's a great moment. And at the end of the day, isn't that, you're meant to be having those sorts of moments. So trying to make sure that you're not metagaming as a DM and trying to really think about what your enemies would and wouldn't know can also be a really important part of it as well. Much, much harder to police, because the players can't really police if the DM is metagaming or not. If the DM really wanted to, they could. There's not really any way of the players really knowing much about that. If the DM wanted to be really nasty.
Yeah, true.
But yeah, it's something to keep in mind. It's something to keep in mind. And it's something that you should be thinking about a lot when playing the game in general is, even when doing, like taking it out of a combat sense, and even when you're doing like a social interaction, if you know something out of game, like especially if the party's split up or something, if you know something out of game, don't let that sway how you communicate with the character. Like, if your character doesn't know that this guy's a bad guy or whatever, don't treat him like a bad guy. Talk to him like you would normally talk to him. That sort of stuff. Like I said, it really enriches the game to try and really dive into that sense of the role play without having that outside information yapping at your ear.
Yeah, it's kind of good to start every campaign with like a fresh palette. Just open mind and just go in thinking it's like creating a brand new character. It's just
it is every time. It's totally new experience.
It's clean slate. Yeah, I think that's the one thing you need to remember is just try and not let outside knowledge shape how you play a game. And
if it does accidentally, like if you sort of do something, you realize, maybe I wouldn't have known that information. It's not the end of the world. At the end of the day, it's a game. If you're just trying to be conscious about playing the game fairly, having a bit of fun with your mates. At the end of the day, that's all that matters. And if there are players that are really trying to look stuff up or cheat or use outside knowledge, maybe they shouldn't be part of your game. Or maybe you want to go and find a different group. Because if you're not having fun, why roll the dice?
Exactly. So, I think when it comes to metagaming, communication is extremely important. And also, if you are comfortable standing up for yourself, and staying up for how you want to play the game. So don't let anyone try and dictate how you play.
I mean, at the end of the day, if you've got a good group of players, you don't have to worry about it. Like we just finished a campaign where we had absolutely, I didn't notice zero metagaming at all for the entire, because we had a good group of players. Yeah. Everyone was, keen to just role play and enjoy the game.
I think you might play it probably like a almost perfect run through.
Yeah. I mean, you might play your entire, tabletop career without coming across anything like that. I suppose it's just something to be aware of, because you don't want to accidentally be the person that is doing that because you didn't realise, actually this is metagaming, I shouldn't be doing that. I shouldn't be telling Jimmy how to play his character. I should let Jimmy play it how he wants to play it, and I'll play mine how I want to play mine.
Yeah, and if you do end up in a group where you do have that one player that becomes a bit of a problem, especially with meta, then address it with the DM, and then hopefully...
Yeah, I mean, that's a whole nother topic dealing with... There's a few topics that sort of stem from this, which we're definitely going to cover.
It'll probably become a series when we do...
so there's dealing with the problem players, and there's also the illusion of power gaming, which are sort of in tandem, but we'll probably cover them in separate videos, because I think they're just massive topics on their own.
They definitely are.
Yeah. But I mean, as I said, at the end of the day, there's a lot of negativity in there. And at the end of the day, it's a fun game. It's a fantastic hobby that I'm absolutely obsessed with. It's just something to be aware of. But at the end of the day, have a bit of fun, enjoy playing with your friends. That's the whole point.
Yeah,
that's why we roll the clicky clackies.
So I think we covered pretty much everything on meta.
Yeah. If anyone has any questions around meta, feel free to chuck it in the chat, or come at the Game On Oz pages, on Twitter or Facebook, whatever. Ask some questions that we can always address it in upcoming episodes.
Yeah.
But what do you reckon? Is it time for the moment everyone's waiting for? Is it time for the joke?
The joke. Yes.
All right. This isn't easy. You don't even have to be into D&D to get this. Okay. This isn't easy.
Well, the last joke you had wasn't even a joke, because I got the answer right.
It was still a joke.
Yeah, but I felt like it was a trivia.
Oh, all right. I don't reckon you'll get this one. Okay. What tool does a wizard use when writing his spells in his spell book?
I was going to say a quill.
A spell checker?
Oh.
I know. It's great, isn't it?
That one was really bad.
It wasn't. It was great. It was for the modern age.
That was terrible.
Hey, you're laughing. It counts.
Dad joke level.
It is. We like to finish off the episodes with that nice, sweet dad joke level D&D joke in your mouth. I think that they're great. I think that they're a fan favourite.
So it was a bit of a short episode tonight. We didn't cover on any news because it's a bit quiet.
Yeah, the big news is still the new book that's come out. So definitely check that out if you haven't yet. That's the books that come out that are released for D&D. They're the biggest part. And we do have some upcoming stuff that we will be addressing, such as the D&D movie. There's a new Ravenloft book coming out. There's a few upcoming bits and pieces. But we thought we'd pace it a little bit so we don't oversaturate you guys with too much information and everyone's going to be buying all the new stuff and not having any money left.
That's true. But thank you everyone for watching. We'll be back next week with a brand new topic, brand new discussion.
Absolutely.
More horrible jokes.
Fantastic jokes that everyone loves.
But thank you everyone for sticking around. We'll see you next week. And we're Married with Dragons.
Catch you next week, guys. Have a good one.